Hello, everyone. This is Pam, and I'm going to continue my review on Chapter 6 of Learning from a Stranger by David Smith. Smith, in page 106, says that intercultural learning is not just a means to a later end, but can itself be a process that encourages and involves spiritual growth. He divides this growth process into three phases: before an intercultural encounter, during, and after. So before you encounter someone, you have to be engaged in learning to increase your chances of being a blessing rather than a curse. He also recommends that during the encounter, draw on ways of hearing well, respond considerably, and be a loving presence. And after that encounter, this is how we learn. We find ways of integrating what we learned into our identity as evidence that the other has been a real presence in our life. I'm going to share an example that David Smith used of his own student named Matthew. Matthew had spent some time in Switzerland staying with a Swiss family. In Matthew's case, he had actually offended the family because of his long showers. It had not occurred to Matthew that he had done anything wrong by the way he showered, but the host thought of water as a limited and expensive resource. So Matthew's habit of leaving the water open the entire time seemed wasteful to the host. Well, during this encounter, Matthew responded well and learned to turn off the water while he was applying soap and then turn it on again. This experience set Matthew into thinking how he used water and how that related to his concern about the natural environment. So he concluded that he was going to practice what he learned from his cultural experience, which helped him not just be enriched, but corrected by the experience. So basically, Matthew found ways of integrating what he learned into his life. And that's what intercultural learning is all about. One of the constructs that David Smith brings about is a concept of cultivating humility, which means, he says on page 117, refusing to judge and exercising humility creates space for the other to really enter into our space. A theory that seems to oppose cultivating humility is something called white privilege. White privilege got popularized by Peggy McIntosh in 1988. And what she said is she describes it as the advantage that whites in Western society enjoy and non-whites do not experience as an invisible package of unearned assets. I agree that advantages we have in our lives can make us prideful. I personally had an experience like this when I was serving as a missionary in a country. In that country, the electricity was shut off without any warning almost on a daily basis. I then didn't have any water coming out of my taps because it took power to pump water. I remember feeling violated and frustrated that my rights were taken away. I was challenged by the attitude of the local folks who taught me that water and electricity are not rights. They were just grateful that they had water and electricity when it did come on and were diligent to fill their buckets when it was on. I had learned a lesson on humility, and basically my privilege of thinking that I deserved 24/7 water and electricity hindered me from initially learning from that experience. I was being judgmental, like, and so that was my invisible package of unearned assets. So basically, in conclusion, let's take on the challenge of cultivating humility, refusing to judge and exercising humility by creating space for the other to really enter our personal space so that we can grow in being more and more loving to the other. Here are the references, and thank you for listening.